The 2025 UFC Middleweight Marathon continues forward this coming weekend at UFC Vegas 104 in the Apex in Las Vegas. Marvin Vettori versus Roman Dolidze, Part 2. And while we've had a little break in the action for this so-called middleweight marathon that I've been talking about the last couple of months, don't get it twisted. There's still been a lot of moving pieces at 185 pounds this year, and will continue this weekend as the number 8 Marvin Vettori takes on the number 12 ranked Roman Dolidze. In the marathon leading into this point, we have seen so far Nassourdine Imavov defeat Israel Adesanya in the UFC Saudi Arabia main event, where he finished him in the second round with strikes. Now he sits at number 1 in the world at 185 pounds. We saw Dricus du Plessis move to 2-0 against Sean Strickland and defend his middleweight title for the second consecutive time. And we saw Jared Cannonier hold his spot in the top 10, currently at number 7, by knocking out Gregory Rodriguez in their main event bout back at the Apex in February. And while it wasn't a main event, it's still a part of the middleweight marathon. Anthony Fluffy Hernandez improved his win streak to 7 when he got a unanimous decision victory over Brendan Allen at UFC Seattle. And now the 5th top 15 middleweight fight of the year so far, even though it's only the middle of March, goes down this weekend. Marvin Vettori won the first one nearly 2 years ago to the day, March 18th of 2023. Now they will step across from each other in the octagon once more, March 15th of 2025. Who takes a step forward? Who takes a step backward? Who puts their name in the hat of middleweight title contention? While Marvin Vettori is going on his 9th year in the Ultimate Fighting Championship, he is still just 31 years old and has a variety of experience against some of the best middleweights in the world over the past near decade, including 2 fights with Israel Adesanya, one of them being for championship gold. Fights against Roman Dolidze, as already mentioned, Jared Cannonier, Robert Whittaker, Paulo Costa, Kevin Holland, and Jack Hermanson. You name him, he's basically fought him. And in his 15-fight UFC career through the first 9 years, he's got 9 wins, 5 losses, and 1 draw to his name, with a complete record of 19-7-1, having finished 11 of them with 9 by way of submission. And dating back to his title fight loss to Israel Adesanya, June 12th of 2021 at UFC 263, if you count that, Marvin has fought just 5 total times since the summer of 2021, going on nearly 4 years ago. He had just 1 fight in 2022, 2 fights in 2023, both of which we've already discussed, and 0 action in all of 2024. And while Roman Dolidze wouldn't fight again in 2023 after his March 18th loss to Marvin Vettori, he would go on to have a 3-fight year in 2024, winning 2 of them, and now he steps into the cage for the first time this year. He would lose the next fight following the Vettori loss to Nassourdine Imavov in a very close majority decision, but then would go on a 2-fight win streak, one up a weight class at 205 pounds on short notice against Anthony Smith, a former title challenger at light heavyweight. Then he would come back down to his home of 185 and get a TKO stoppage over Kevin Holland back at UFC 307. And while there was an injury for Kevin Holland in that one, it was all Roman Dolidze for those first 5 minutes, and he was en route to getting a very big victory, whether it be by finish or by decision. I don't believe Kevin Holland was going to be able to do enough to get his hand raised in that fight against Dolidze. So we have one man who's fought 1 time over the last 2 years versus one man that fought 3 times in 2024 alone. Now will look to make his win streak 3 in a row and get back in to the top 10 of this middleweight division. In their first fight 2 years ago in March of 2023, Marvin Vettori would get the decision nod over the course of just 3 rounds, as it was a featured bout on that UFC 286 Leon Edwards versus Kamaru Usman 3-fight card. There would be a total of 1 takedown attempted, and that was on the side of Roman Dolidze, where he would be unsuccessful in just 14 total seconds of control time in the clinch, which was also for Roman Dolidze. Outside of that, this fight took place solely in the kickboxing and boxing ranges, where Vettori would outland Roman 106-71 over the course of the 15 minutes. And round by round, Marvin Vettori would slowly but surely up his striking differential over Dolidze, leading to that decision nod where he would get 2 29-28 scorecards and 1 30-27, outstriking Dolidze by 9 strikes in round 1, 12 strikes in round 2, and 14 strikes in round 3. And while the head strikes between both were very close at 60 for Marvin and 52 for Roman, the huge discrepancy in this fight was in the leg kicks, as Vettori would land 38 out of 40 attempted kicks, whereas Roman Dolidze would just land 8. These are two just solid mixed martial artists at the end of the day that don't necessarily specialize in one specific area but are just good everywhere. Yes, of course, when Marvin Vettori seems to get finishes, 9 out of the 11 are by way of submission, but I just don't foresee him being able to get Dolidze down, holding him down, and submitting him. Especially when you take into account that Dolidze has never been finished whatsoever, let alone be submitted, as all 3 of his losses are by way of decision, and for him, he's finished 11 out of 14, so does finish fights at a much higher clip, and 8 of those 11 are by way of knockout. But, much like Roman Dolidze, Marvin Vettori has also never been submitted. He's never been knocked out, and, well, he's just never been finished in general, as all of his losses are also by way of decision. These are truly 2 of the most durable athletes in the middleweight weight class right now. Something does have to give. Someone has to get a convincing victory to remain relevant in this middleweight division. Otherwise, they will be forgotten from all of the other big-time performances that have already come before them in the first 2 months of the year, 2.5 months now. I want to hear from you all in the comments below on how you think this fight is going to play out. Will Marvin Vettori improve to 2-0 against Roman Dolidze, hold his spot in the top 10, and maybe be 1 or 2 more wins away from getting his second crack at middleweight gold? Or will Roman Dolidze avenge his loss from 2 years ago to Vettori, make it 3 victories in a row, reinsert himself to where he once was in the top 10 at middleweight, and he himself may just be 1 or 2 wins away from a title fight at that point in what would be his first ever attempt at getting a belt wrapped around his waist in the UFC. And now that we are done with the main event discussion, let's jump into a couple of other notable fights on this card before we head on out of here today. Outside of the main event between Vettori and Dolidze, there aren't many other fights, if any, that have a lot of storylines or stakes on the line. There definitely isn't a lot of name value on this card. However, there is one fight in the heavyweight division that has a little bit of something that we can discuss real quick, and it's between Waldo Cortes Acosta, a ranked heavyweight may I add, and Ryan Superman Spann making his heavyweight debut. The former Cincinnati Reds pitcher in the minor leagues, Waldo Cortes Acosta, has racked up a record of 5-1 since joining the UFC after his TKO finish on the 2022 season of Dana White's Contender Series, with the lone loss coming to Marcos Rogerio de Lima, and that was back in April of 2023, almost 2 years ago. Since then, 3 victories in a row. He's 33 years old, so right in those prime years, with a record of 12-1 overall. I think the only problem with Waldo is that he doesn't have a very high finishing rate to be a heavyweight, as only 6 of his 12 victories have come by way of stoppage, and just 1 so far in the UFC. But the 6'4", number 12 ranked heavyweight salsa boy, Waldo Cortes Acosta, is a force to be reckoned with. He is a very skilled striker on the feet, and again, while he doesn't put a lot of people away with devastating KOs, he's much more technical than a lot of his counterparts, especially in the back half of the heavyweights. And that's why I feel like this is a perfect chance for Ryan Spann to debut into a new weight class up at heavyweight, because unlike Waldo Cortes Acosta, Ryan Spann hardly ever sees the judges' scorecards, has 32 professional fights overall, 26 of them have not gone the distance. He's finished 19 out of 22 victories, been finished in 7 out of 10 losses. He as well is just 33 years old, right in his prime, and even though he's been a light heavyweight, he will be the bigger man in this fight. Maybe not in terms of width, but he's going to be 6'5" and the longer, rangier fighter, and the more dangerous fighter in terms of finishing capabilities. Part of the reason that Ryan Spann may be joining the heavyweight division is the fact that he's lost 3 of his last 4 fights, but it's worth noting that he isn't coming in off of a loss. He is coming in off of a finish victory over Ovent St. Preux back in October at UFC 307, where he would get a first-round submission via guillotine in just 1 minute and 35 seconds. And to be fair, the 3 losses before that, Bogdan Guskov, a very dangerous fighter in the back half of the top 15 at 205, Anthony Smith, a very close split decision, may I add, and Nikita Krylov, a top 10 light heavyweight. He is a freak of nature, insanely athletic, and I feel like he can be a really fun addition to the heavyweights. He's a breath of fresh air, and I think he can really catapult his way quickly up the heavyweight ranks, but it all starts with a victory over Waldo Cortes Acosta this weekend at UFC Vegas 104, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on this move up for Ryan Spann, and if you think it will pay off. And then I just want to talk about a couple of fights that should get your attention and may be pretty fun to tune into for as little or as long as as they last. The co-main event will feature Chidi Bang Bang Chidi and Njokuani versus Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos, the longtime UFC veteran, in a fight that more than likely won't see the scorecards. The 23-year-old Kevin Vallejos out of Argentina is 14-1 and will make his UFC debut this weekend against Seungwoo Choi, and his only loss was to Jean Silva, and that was on the Contender Series back in 2023. Since then, 3 victories in a row. Out of his 14 wins, 12 of them are by stoppage, 10 by knockout. And we've got 2 undefeated prospects early on the card, one at bantamweight and one at flyweight. The first at 135 pounds is Josias Musasa, who is 8-0 with 7 knockouts, just 26 years young. He got a victory on the Contender Series in September of 2024 after a split decision victory, the only fight of his career to go through the scorecards. And the other undefeated prospect down at flyweight is the 10-0 Andre Lima, who is also 26 years old, has finished 5 of his 10 victories, and is the only man in UFC history to get a victory via disqualification due to biting. But since that disqualification victory, he has gotten 2 legitimate victories as well against Mitch Raposo and Felipe dos Santos, both of those by way of decision, so 3-0 overall in the UFC, plus his victory on the Contender Series. So that is it for this weekend's breakdown. Again, it's not the most stacked card of all time, but the middleweight marathon continues, and that is what I'm looking forward to most. The 185-pound division, man, I'm telling you, this is the year of middleweight, is 2025. Give me your predictions in the comments if it will be Vettori going 2-0 or if it will be Dolidze tying up the score and cracking back into the top 10. Give me your thoughts on the rest of this card, some of your sneaky fights that you're looking forward to, and some of the bets that you're looking to place as well. If you enjoyed this breakdown, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Every single weekend, I break down and preview the biggest and best fights and discuss the storylines and what is at stake. I also recap the most meaningful results from each card and give my thoughts and opinions on MMA news and fight announcements. You can join the community on social media at Verbal Spar MMA on X, Instagram, and TikTok, and you can follow on your favorite audio listening platform where every Monday and Friday podcast episodes release on Spotify, Apple, and more. Have a great weekend, enjoy the fights, and I will see you in the next video.